The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is
Wednesday. It's hump day.
Yes, very, very significant today to us of some Arab ethnicity. So it's hump day like the camel. So
that's a reminder of a Geico commercial.
That's right. It's hump day.
You know what day it is? You know what day it is?
Yeah. But I guess we have a few issues today, and I know that you received a call, but the charter will be in dispute again, I guess.
Yes, there is.
By the incumbent
school committee member.
School committee member is I don't know if he's actually, but he is contemplating litigation. And as I said before, I just look. He may lose. He may lose. I don't know. Then again, he may win because this interpretation that we saw with ours that they use the word successor and I don't know about grandfathering, but the reality is, win, lose, or draw, I believe he should be allowed to serve in that capacity. I just cannot understand, again, the courts, because I'll segue into something else. You know me.
Yep.
I'm using this as a segue. So I don't know how any court, but then again I do, I'm being rhetorical, how any court can make a ruling that basically disenfranchises an entire group of people. To say that because you're a public employee, you can't hold that office without giving up your other job, to me, is discriminatory. So what's the next thing to do? Are we gonna say that if plumbers pull a city permit that they can't run for office, or they may become at some point in time the city plumber or plumbing inspector? You can't. I mean, there are. We have had people who have had city jobs served, and they had to choose what salary they were going to take. But to basically say that you can't, isn't it ironic? I don't know if we could do that for any other segment of the population. You can't just arbitrarily and capriciously eliminate a group of people because of their sexual preference, their color, their ethnicity. You would be, you'd be virtually accused of a hate crime, and that would be thrown out as discriminatory. I just don't see it. You're going to say that anybody who works for a city can't run for public office? Now, granted, there are issues with that. They may have to recuse themselves on certain votes, but it's up to the voters. Again, there I go talking about the people running the government again. Silly me. But, our legal system is not a criminal justice system or even a civil justice system. My segue now into the Smollett case. If you've got money and you've got power, you've got a different set of criteria. Because you're friendly with, you do your community service with Jesse Jackson, you're friendly with the Obamas, and then all of a sudden prosecutors go, oh, well. And you can see the outrage by the Chicago police and by the mayor of Chicago, and justifiably so. Because I feel that if you did that, or if I did that, they would be right now hammering us to a wall, the nearest wall. And, this is another example of how we have selective justice and selective enforcement. and selective interpretations in our courts. That's why I've always been a firm believer in Hammurabi's Code. So, okay, CJ, your turn.
Well, one of the things that's interesting is people say that it is your constitutional right to be elected to office. It is not your constitutional right. And the courts have upheld that because in other charters in the state, where it does say that you cannot serve in 2 positions, because this is something that's part of this guy's boilerplate, it's been upheld that you can't run and be in, you have to make it, because you're making a choice. Now, I may not agree with that, but they're saying you're making a choice. You either choose to be on the school committee or a selectman or a city councilor or the mayor, or you choose to have your job as a teacher or a custodian or a fireman or a policeman or whatever the case may be. And because you're making that choice. If you know the rules beforehand, you're making the choice.
Well, I partially agree with that.
Yeah.
However, this gets me back to one of my, major bones that I have with the system. If you're a movie actor or a TV actor, you got enough money and enough friends and enough people in power to make sure that those rules get waived for you.
That's right.
And the reality is that I don't believe these things would stand up if somebody had $1 million or so, or $500,000 that they want to litigate it for, because I will call your attention to this last ruling. What did they say? What did this judge say? He said that Jazel Correa satisfied the criteria for running for office. He went out and got his 300 signatures to qualify him for office. Therefore, he could be a candidate. And I understand you're saying, well, now there's another caveat to that that says if you choose to make that you have to, these conditions are imposed. And you're right, you're entitled, as you said, you may agree or disagree. Well, I vehemently disagree with that position, because I think it's discriminatory, because they could not put in any charter that you cannot hold 2 offices if you're black. You can't hold 2 offices if you're Jewish. You can't hold 2 offices if you're gay. But if you're a city employee, you don't get to hold office. I'm sorry. That, you are disenfranchising an entire section
I agree with
of
you.
our population. So I don't give a damn what a judge says. This is the problem in the United States, because the old adage, you can't fight City Hall, doesn't mean that you're not right. It means that we poor people who are paying the people who are trying to tuck it to us, they're using our tax money to pay their attorneys to uphold their discriminatory decisions, and we have to go out and scrape up enough money to try to beat them, and it probably would have to go to the Supreme Court, and you can't fight City Hall, not because you're not right, because you can't afford it.
Exactly.
And that's the reality of the situation.
But, you mentioned the judge's ruling about, Jazel Correa met the qualifications to be on the ballot. But you left out one caveat to that. He said, because the charter did not say he could not be.
Oh, no, I did not leave that out. I said it on another program.
Right, on another program.
And the reality is, as I said, there are provisions like this in other charters, and I think they're all discriminatory, not just Fall River. I am an equal opportunity condemner of this type of language. I don't care.
You got the red tags?
That's right, because I just don't, as I said, I'm looking at this from a logical sense, and the law isn't logical.
I was going to say.
As you said, the 4 corners of the document,
right.
They get so myopic to allow them to make these obscene decisions, like murderers can go free if they're not Mirandized, or there's the wrong address on a search warrant, and that gets thrown out of court, and we allow criminals to get over on the criminal justice system on technicalities. I think it's fundamentally wrong. I'm sorry. It is fundamentally wrong. And when I look at something like this that eliminates anybody who works for the city, what's the next step? They would never attempt that and say you can't do it based on the color of your skin, your religious beliefs, your sexual preference, because they know that would immediately. The American Civil Liberties Union would be down here with torches and pitchforks. But you eliminate public employees? The hell with them. Nobody cares. Give them a stipend.
And maybe they can get it to qualify in their pension.
That's right, which is another segue for later. But no, it just irritates me because, you know, you see this stuff, and especially on the heels of this decision, and I spoke to another lawyer this morning about the absurdity, in my opinion, and it's my opinion, of saying that successor doesn't mean something different because it was used in a previous charter, which is now gone. You can't say that the pre-2017 charter exists in virtually anything, except when they want to take one word. Because, you know, I have sat in arbitrations where judges have told people, you can't take that word or that sentence out of context. You have to read the entire damn law to put it into context. Yet we have a judge who takes one word that no longer, that charter is null and void. And the language was repealed. It's no longer a statute. And they created new language. So people are victimized because we had an incompetent, for the most part, except for Dan Robillard, charter commission. A charter commission that wouldn't listen. And a lawyer I spoke to this morning, who's a very good lawyer, basically said, yeah, you know, I understand what you're saying. He said, but there is case law that they can do that. Of course there is, because judges are taking care of judges. That's why you got to go to the Supreme Court on half of these things, and nobody's got the money to do it. I just think it's fundamentally wrong. And that's the thing. It's about the process, as you've said, and I've said numerous times during this crap show. It's got nothing to do with Jazel career. It had nothing to do with Will Flanagan. The recall was about him. His ability to replace himself by a plurality over a majority, to me, is fundamentally wrong. Interpretations like successor doesn't mean what it says in a dictionary. So if we make it clear anything is applicable, right? I guess that's the interpretation. So I guess if we put in the Fall River Charter that within the city limits of Fall River, murder is legal, I guess everybody bring anybody they wanted to murder over the Fall River, because it would be very clear in the charter. I don't think that'd hold up.
I don't think that holds up either.
Yeah, you know, but then again, what do we have here? We have indiscriminate interpretations of the law based on the judge, based on the judge's subjective opinions. And that's why I'm a constitutionalist, because I believe that we are the government and we should determine what we want, not a judge when it comes to issues like this. And that's why if I hit it, I will take all of this stuff to the Supreme Court. And as I said, I've always been somebody who abided by the law, tried to change it, and has lived by the decision and the will of the people. I mean, I don't care who gets elected. Well, I do care, but I mean, you know, but I will go to vote, and I will vote my conscience. But if I do not prevail, I will live with the consequences, and I will live with what the people said, because I don't have a complaint. I dislike what the result was, but I'm one of the people who I feel is entitled to complain because I voted against it. I was opposed to this charter. We tried to block Will Flanagan. I do not believe that in this nation the majority does not rule in any circumstance. especially in an election. That's why we have preliminary elections and final elections, to allow a majority opinion. And the people who do, in most cases, who do allow a plurality have a weighted vote, which fundamentally results in a majority. Kind of a little complex because you select 1, 2, you know, in order, and then they have a weighted system, which if you want to look it up, you can look at how an arbitrator is chosen. I've done that on numerous occasions when we were selecting arbitrators. But, you know, I'm sorry. You know, and then when I turn on the TV and see the Smollett deal, and it's like I think of what would have happened to me or to you had you done that. But like I said, if you're rich, because we can look at them all. Klaus von Bülow. How did Klaus von Bülow get off, CJ?
Technicalities and money.
Technicality. He was found guilty. He was guilty.
Right.
And then he hired Alan Dershowitz, and Alan Dershowitz found the technicality. And what did Alan Dershowitz say later on? I'll never forget that as long as I live on Nightline. And I vehemently disagree. And that's why lawyers are probably the most disliked profession behind politicians in the world. When Alan Dershowitz went on Nightline after that decision, and he said, paraphrasing, because my memory is good, but not that good, the integrity of the legal system is more important than the issue that's decided. So what he was saying was that he was upholding the system, and it was more important than this man committed murder. Just like he defended the guy who killed 28 people in a McDonald's in front of all kinds of witnesses and had to be acquitted because he wasn't Mirandized. I'm sorry. I will never think that's right. Never. As long as I draw a breath, I do not think the system is more important than justice to the individuals who a crime was perpetrated on. Those 28 people who lost their lives, men, women, and children, in a McDonald's, were done a disservice, and it was outrageous. And for somebody to get up and try to say the system is more important than the people who are victimized, well, you can have that opinion, Mr. Dershowitz, and you can be a quote-unquote legal scholar. But I'll tell you one thing. I'd much rather be tried under Hammurabi's code, and we didn't need you guys. So
at least you knew what you were getting there.
At least you knew it. At least you know what you were getting. But the problem I have, and the biggest problem I have on this, is that there's a double standard. That standard would not be, you know, if you couldn't have hired, if von Bülow wasn't a millionaire and he couldn't have hired Alan Dershowitz, he'd still be in jail.
Right.
You know, and that's the problem. If O.J. couldn't hire the dream team, and if this glove doesn't fit, you must acquit, Johnny Cochran and F. Lee Bailey and all the rest of them, he'd be walking around, and if he didn't have celebrity status, and Smollett, and you can go on and on, but Joe Schmo down the corner with the public defender, he's toast. Because then the legal system works for the people without any money. Because you got some kid that's just out of law school, and you're his first case, and you know it's going to be let's make a deal time, and you're going to jail, pal.
That's it.
That's my problem with the system, because you know the mistress of justice is blindfolded, but she's not only blind, she's deaf and dumb, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, because we do have a political system that truly isn't representative.
That's corrupt.
It's a monarchy, and we have a justice system which is not fair. to the average person. So that's my rant for today, but it's my opinion, and you can all disagree with me. But the next time you go to jail and you can't afford an attorney, you'll say, you know something? I think he might have had a point.
That's it. That's it. Well, as many people know, we had a local cemetery which was defaced.
Yeah, desecrated.
Desecrated, the Jewish cemetery. If those of you who don't know where it is, it's up behind, it's over by where...
the Shores used to be.
Yeah, Ocean State Job Lot is now.
Yeah.
And Aldi's is coming there. They started the construction over there for the Aldi's. But that was a terrible thing to happen. That was a hate crime. There was no question about it. But what happened is they had a vigil last night. And to me, it wasn't a vigil, totally. It was a political speech. It was a political campaign ploy. Every politician stepped up and had something to say. And you know what? I understand they all want to have their place. They want to do their thing. They want to go where they go. But this was about respect. This was about a hate crime. This wasn't about you having your 5 minutes in the camera or your 10-minute speech. And I mean, it wasn't only local politicians. It was state politicians. Our state delegation were there.
Yeah, they never saw a camera they didn't like.
Exactly.
And you're right. This was a travesty. You know, hate of groups or hating other individuals. It has no place. And what I was really, you know, impressed by was there were over 900 people that gathered, and that is, you know, it is befitting to stand up for one another. That's the headline in the first section of the Herald News article, and decry racism, decry, you know, overall hate, and you know, and one of the problems I see is, as you said, CJ, they turned this into a political thing, and it's not, because victimization is becoming a card that people play, like the race card, and it shouldn't be. It should just be what moral people do, and it shouldn't be about saying that other people. It's about all people, you know, and you have to stand up. And we remember what Nehemiah said, and it's on the Holocaust Memorial in Boston, when he talked about the various groups they came for, and he said nothing. And he said, when they came for me, there was nothing, there was no one left to speak. Well, they didn't only take Jews. He was a Lutheran minister. They took trade unions. They took gypsies. They took Roman Catholics. Of course, the greatest number were Jewish. But the reality is they took everybody. So what's the message there? This is about hating people and making them, you know, carving them out, not for good, but for hate. That's what Hitler did when he wanted to create the Aryan race. Everybody that wasn't an Aryan was subhuman. That doesn't belong in any civilized society. I stood in one of the boxcars that they took them to the concentration camps in when I visited the Holocaust Museum in Washington to donate pictures my father took when he liberated Buchenwald, the first concentration camp liberated by American forces. They now reside in the Holocaust Museum in Washington. He took them with a camera he confiscated from a German military officer. I still have that camera. And you should all go to the Holocaust Museum in Washington. It is something that you'll never forget. But this doesn't belong against any group, against any individual. Yeah, it just doesn't belong in a civilized society. The old adage of divided, you know, united we stand, divided we we fall is clear. Whether you divide people by their religious beliefs, their color, their ethnicity, it just doesn't belong. We are unraveling the fabric of America. As Theodore Roosevelt said, there's no such thing as a hyphenated American. Some of the greatest Americans I knew were naturalized Americans. What he was saying was that we should all be Americans, regardless of anything. And we see, especially the Democratic Party, fostering and encouraging division. We see what Omar says. We see what Ocasio-Cortez is saying. Anybody that says anything negative about her is a racist. She's always using the victim card. Yet she isn't when she calls other people a racist. It doesn't belong in a dialogue. Stick with the subjects. Stick with what, stick it about politics, and let's make it about, not about this. Let's, you know, and I don't think we'll see that again for a very long time, probably not in my lifetime, because it's become a political tool to divide people into voting groups so you can pander to their whims. And that's something that, to me, flies in the face of the way this country was created. My grandparents on both sides came over from a foreign country. They were exposed to racism, to prejudice. They were called many names. My Arabic side were called sand hyphenated N-word. My Portuguese side were called black Portuguese. I saw it when I grew up. The French did. The Irish did. They rose above it. They had to take it. But they became Americans. They assimilated into our society. I'm seeing it going in the other direction. That's just my opinion. But I'll tell you what, America's fallen apart as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it's interesting you should bring this up. In August of 1790, George Washington addressed the Hebrew synagogue in Newport, Rhode Island. In a 340-word speech, I'm going to take out one section of that speech, which I'm going to quote him. "For happily the government of the United States gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens in giving it on all occasions their effectual support." That's very clear.
Yeah.
The United States was not formed for bigotry.
Yeah, well, you know, George was a pretty good guy. I mean, you know, he's the father of the country, fought for this country, and he said it. And the thing was, that was the thing. Every single person who fought in that revolution came here for religious freedom, for freedom from persecution, and to be just one thing, an American. What does the Statue of Liberty say? What are the immigrants that came when my grandparents came in the early 1900s? They wanted to be Americans, and they assimilated, and it was difficult. And the Chinese were called, they had anti-Chinese leagues on the West Coast. But what happened? When we assimilate, we assimilate. But I see the other motion to divide us even further. And, you know, they were pretty smart, those forefathers of ours, because many of the things they said, and even going not that far back to Theodore Roosevelt when he said, "I don't care where you came from, we're all Americans." That's what he said. I urge you all to look up his speech called Hyphenated Americans and read the entire speech, because it speaks volumes about what we have now for politics, the politics of division.
Well, that's very clear, and I think George Washington, if you get a chance, read that letter from George Washington. You can Google it. It's a very interesting letter, and it goes to show you how a fledgling nation got its start. And now we, 200 years later, want to destroy it.
Yep, exactly, CJ. They created this nation to avoid just what we're seeing now.
And it's a shame.
It is.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on Friday.